welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. All right, Sarah, welcome to the podcast. Very excited to have you here.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
First question we always start with, what is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
Oh, damn, that's a tricky question because I have my son in the 12th house, so I feel like there's a lot that people don't know about me, and I'm fine with that. There's a lot I do in secret behind closed doors. I guess, okay, something that's on my mind more recently that I'm having my 363rd identity crisis around is I just did my Reiki certification, my Reiki masters. So I did level 1 and 2 10 years ago when I was in India, right when I was kind of going through my Saturn return and I had like a big burnout. And that's when I transitioned out of my career in film production and into entrepreneurship. And we're about to do IVF. Like we're about to have we've got some embryos in the freezer. We're about to put them in. So I'm kind of like, it feels like a really hard deadline, you know, obviously fingers crossed it all goes well. And it just felt like, oh, this is something that I can do for me. Now I have time, you know, and I'm just taking care of me, and it'd been on my mind to do it. And since studying my astrology and realizing how much 12th house energy I have, I was like, might as well do my Reiki certification. I always feel the push-pull between the identities of like strategist and healer, because energetics is really a big part of my work. I think I have a lot more magic than I maybe give myself credit for sometimes. So yeah, I would probably say that.
That's so interesting. Do you think that you come off more as someone who's structured and strategic?
Yeah, because I'm a Virgo rising, and I can definitely feel myself moving more and more into that energy as I get older. And the shadow side of that is obviously being kind of controlling in my love of being systematic. And there's a lot in my chart, which, you know, is super creative and also mutable. I have a lot of fire, I have a lot of air, but I do also have a lot of earth. I'm pretty balanced in those ways. And I think when I started my business, that was a very intuitive process because I had so many chronic health issues that it really forced me to listen to myself because I didn't have any of the answers and I couldn't find a lot of the answers. So I built my business from a very intuitive place, and I think I built a lot of really solid skill sets. But then, you know, I went through some challenges in recent years, like with immigration, obviously going through the pandemic. I was immigrating during that time. I had some pretty intense like CPTSD flares, and it felt really hard for me to kind of have control of my energy, especially going through like a lot of grief. And so I think I really leaned into my strategic knowledge and my skill sets during that time. And I think I'm kind of like coming back into the center a little bit after that. I think a lot of the focus of my work with clients and how I help people, it is very action oriented and building habits and being really grounded. And I think that's probably my main skill set and gifts that really helps clients. I have a lot of other intuitive magic in there as well.
There's so much in there that you said. First of all, my sun and moon are in Virgo, so I
Okay.
relate.
You get it, yeah.
I get it. And I'm a Scorpio rising, so
Okay.
I get all the things you're saying. But as far as what you were talking about when you were going through a harder time in this chaos and transition and leading more into the strategy for support, I think that makes so much sense because I've talked to a lot of people. I feel like we can sometimes go either way. Like sometimes when we're going through a moment of upheaval in our life, we can find ourselves just surrendering and completely leaning into intuition. or we can really lean on the strategy and support as a sense of stability and foundation. It sounds like that foundation is really grounding. And so it's so normal that you relied on that. So, how do you feel like you've turned to your intuition to balance that out in your day to day?
When we first started going through IVF, when I was doing the egg retrieval, I kind of, for the first time in my life, didn't feel super motivated in my work and my business. And it kind of felt like the baby creation process kind of became my primary focus and like energetic project, which totally makes sense. And in that process, I kind of started getting really repelled by other people's input. I really felt like I just wanted to be in my own energy. I didn't want to have too much input. So I started unsubscribing, and, kind of like a lot of containers that I was in was coming to an end. And I just cleared up a lot of space to really listen to myself and to be with myself, which is unlike me as a Gemini moon. I'm like, I self-soothe through online education and I love to learn. I'm also a 5/1 in human design, so I'm just always learning and I love it. And I love to do research and I love to have, you're a 5/1 too.
And I'm
Are
also,
you?
we're both manifesting generators as well.
Okay. Snap. Yay. Um, so yeah, and I love to hear the same thing multiple times from different perspectives to like really ground myself in topics. And that was a different experience for me. And then kind of like after I went through the egg retrieval, I kind of got back into being very inspired and motivated in my work again, but still not feeling super drawn to be absorbing a lot of like ideas from other people. So I published my book, The Six Figure Creative, last December. That was like probably the biggest creative project I've taken on. And I kind of put my music on the side to give me the space to focus. I had to make that negotiation with myself. I was like, you don't have time to be working on all these things. So even though my plan was to work on my audiobook this year, I was just like, you know what? I just really want to be getting back into music. And I don't, make money through my music. I really purely do it for myself. And I don't really have a specific project. It's really just something where I play, but it feeds me so much energetically. And I think that kind of made sense, like, because it really puts me in my body, it really makes me present, and it really connects me to my intuition and to myself and to my creativity, which is obviously a great complement to baby making and being in the IVF portal. So that's kind of what I've been in. And I just feel really drawn to creating. And yeah, I think there's that part of me, like the business, like inner CEO, that's like, well, what's the project? What are the goals? And after just finishing my book, which was a really major project, I'm kind of just giving myself time to just like play and create. And like, I'm in that process of, I don't really know what's next, but I'm just listening. And obviously getting pregnant and having a baby, it's a huge shift. It's stepping into a massive unknown. So yeah, I feel like I do just need to trust the flow of life and really live intuitively moment by moment at the moment. But I still have very clear strategic goals in my business that I'm working towards, that I'm constantly checking back in with. So yeah, having done my Reiki certification, I'm really bringing that more into my practice, my morning practice, like when I do my journaling, when I meditate, really tuning in and being open to receive insights and guidance from my intuition and from my guides.
I love that. I think you're touching on such an important process because we are taught that we're always supposed to be forward moving, always productive, always strategic, always just going, 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 and in that more masculine energy. But we can't, it's especially for people who identify as women or like embrace that energy more. We need the space to let new ideas come. We need to create more space. We need to disconnect from the noise and really allow ideas to flow for us, because we can't be constantly making and producing if we're not getting the ideas to make and produce. And if we are trying to do it in that very structured way all the time, it's not going to come from this really deep, authentic part of ourselves. And so by disconnecting from the noise and just getting quiet with ourselves, we allow that intuitive guidance to come through to tell us what next step to take. And then we can do it in a strategic way. Then we can bring in all the structure and support that we are connected to as well. But the intuition, they weave together so perfectly.
Yeah, and obviously this idea that we are cyclical, and also the creative cycle is, it's a cycle and there's different phases. And I never really identified with that until I stepped into that bigger project of my book, because I built my whole business on a very specific set of habits, which I still use to this day, which is pretty much like working on my mindset, doing some sales activities, creating content, and then nourishing myself and playing. Those are the 5 things that when I do them every day, I'm able to just continue to generate and create consistency. Taking on a bigger project like my book, which kind of put me into more like long-term planning and long-term thinking, which was kind of a new skill set for me as a ADHD diagnosed person who really struggled with self-trust and following through and completing things when I was younger. It took me a while to work up to having the skills to schedule, manage my time and commit, build support systems and follow through on things. And so, yeah, and then I went through periods of writing my book. Like I moved across the country during the editing process, and there were times where I just wasn't touching it. And I gave myself a really hard time. I was like, you need to finish this, you need to follow through. Like, what are you doing? Why are you not working on this every day? But then when I finished it, and obviously was like working a lot more with astrology by the time I was ready to publish it. And the date that I published it was like such an astrologically aligned moment for me that it just showed me that everything was unfolding in the perfect timing always. And I always believe that, but obviously sometimes I forget. And that with creative projects and ideas, everything will come in the perfect time. And you really have to trust your process. And, you know, same thing with like getting a baby and having pregnant and getting a baby, having a baby and getting pregnant. Astrology has really been a tool that has brought me so much peace and patience and self-compassion. When you think about planting seeds and growing a garden, like things are ready when they're ready. Things need to grow, they need to percolate, they need to like have roots before they can grow tall. And like these things do take time, and you don't want the fruit before it's ripe because it doesn't taste good, you know? So yeah, lots of lessons.
Yeah, it's interesting because for so long I did not identify at all with being a creative person. And I pushed that away. And I think a big part of that is because my Virgo self wanted this consistency, wanted the control, and a creative process is none of that. You never know when you're going to be creative. You never know when that energy is going to come. And I liked projects that I could start and step by step finish. And so I've really had to learn how to embrace creativity, and now it's such a core part of who I am, but that didn't always come, and now it feels like it comes naturally, but that's because I've leaned into the more healthy aligned aspects of my Virgo and also my whole chart in totality, and understanding my human design and my astrological charts have helped me so much when that fear pops up and the trust kind of wanes and reminds me like, no, this is a part of who you are. And I'm curious, well, one, I guess I'd love to know when you first started to get into astrology and how that relationship developed for you.
Yeah, I'm also really curious to hear about you, like what you feel are the healthy expressions of Virgo for you, because it's definitely an identity that I have struggled to connect with in my chart. And I seriously started studying astrology in 2020, and I signed up for a beginner class. And when then I got into the beginner class, I was like, oh, I already know so much. You know, it's like I'd been by osmosis, just absorbing it without even really noticing how much I'd been learning just through like YouTube videos and things like that. And then it really kind of became a big turning point for me in my business, and just putting an end to the constant questioning of myself. And as a multi-passionate person, like which direction should I be really focusing on and going all in on, and should I do this or should I do this? And my chart really helped me to see like you're all of these things, and these are the things that are really pronounced themes for you that you can trust, that they all get to be there in different levels of expression. And especially in my brand storytelling, there was things that I was intuitively really feeling called to talk about, but I was not sure if that was a good idea, or I was like scared to talk about it. And discovering I have Saturn in the 3rd house in Scorpio, I'm meant to talk about taboos. I'm meant to talk about trauma and money and things that make people feel really uncomfortable, that I had just had so many profound breakthroughs in my own life. And then I naturally just got really curious about my clients' charts, and I started using it in the work I was doing in content strategy and money mindset. And I found that it's such a powerful tool when it comes to brand and storytelling and selling, in really being able to anchor into our intuition, really being able to trust our creative ideas and our message and what we're here to say and to serve around. And it helped me to sidestep a lot of second guessing, which gave me so much creative freedom and confidence. And I found that it's really helpful for clients to not waste time going off on tangents or staying safe in little corners, and to really have the courage to trust what it is that we feel really called to share and to take a stand for and to talk about, and to give really clear frameworks. And whatever questions come up around, should I be focusing on this more in my brand or this more in my offer, and which of my many skill sets or clients should I be focusing on? And so I really kind of developed this way to be able to help people identify, because I work with a lot of multi-passionate creatives, and I think one of our things that holds us back often is being too scattered, and knowing that we can do so many things and we can help so many people and we really enjoy many, many things. But what is that thing to really hone in on in your business and in your brand that's like your highest value offering, where it's your true zone of genius and the people that you can help more than any of the other people? Because yeah, we can help and do so many things, but there's actually a much smaller focus that you can do really, really, really well. And obviously when we focus on that, then we're much better able to significantly raise our prices. We're better at it. We help people create more profound results. And so helping people to really focus in on what that thing is so that they can charge more and have more impact and have more differentiation and power in their brand messaging.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people who are maybe on the outside looking in can think that astrology or human design or other tools like that are very spiritual and woo woo and too witchy for them, but really they're very grounded and very practical in their strategy. Like they do give you a strategy to connect to if you want to use it in that way. And you talk a lot about astrology, and even your brand is you know there's the word magic in a lot of your languaging, and so it's interesting for you to express that you feel like you lean into the strategy more than the intuition, but I feel like it's the way you use these tools are very practical and tangible.
100%. And the thing that I've learned is that it's just a tool. And one copywriter is going to write copy for these types of people in this certain way and create these types of results. Another copywriter will do it in this way. Like, same thing as like a gardener, you know, or like a chef, right? We all have different specialties and different lenses and different histories that make us really powerful specialists for certain groups of people, for certain results and outcomes. I love how, yeah, astrology, it's also a mirror too. We're going to see in the chart, it's just infinite, the information inside somebody's chart, but you're going to see and resonate with and be able to work with the areas of someone's chart that relates to the knowledge that you already have through your lived experience and your wisdom and your skill sets. Like I learned that people can use, you know, medical astrology, like someone who has a background in like herbs or medicine, when they get an understanding of astrology, they can find the roots of certain health conditions and they can find practices and remedies based on your astrology chart, which is so freaking cool. And when it felt really strongly intuitively drawn to bringing more astrology into my work, I went through what I'm sure a lot of people go through when they discover a new tool that they're really excited about. Should I just be an astrologer now? Is this just going to be my thing? Am I just going to have an astrology business? And then, but there's so many other people who are so much better than me and have been doing this for so much longer, and all the imposter syndrome, right? And then I realized, you know, and it just came through the work I was already doing with my clients and just seeing how useful it was to the work that I was already doing. And then I was able to develop my own frameworks and my own way of using it. And I think sometimes we give our tools too much power and we make them too much of the thing. Whereas it's like, it's our embodied wisdom, our knowledge, our story. Like I always say, your story is your curriculum. Like what it is that you've lived through and walked through holds so much wisdom and so much power that's really invaluable that no one can replace. No one can do it just the way that you do for the people who are going to resonate with that, you know? And these are just tools for self-reflection, and they can show us what feelings we have about certain directions or certain choices. That in itself, even if we're like, ugh, I hate this, like that's information that you get to then reflect on and work with and see where your intuition and your desires are pointing you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is something I went through myself and that I'm pretty passionate about because I am an herbalist, am a human design guide, I am a yoga therapist. And for a while, I mean, especially I started off in the yoga world and I thought I am going to be a yoga teacher and this is my path and this is what I'm doing. And for some people, that is their path, and that's perfect and that's amazing, that's aligned. But for me, it became very clear as I walked deeper onto my journey that these are just tools I use to help people connect to themselves. And I am not any of these things. And especially, I think, you know, a lot of manifesting generators will resonate with this, but it's really allowing your self to create your own path and to do things differently. And just because you use astrology in your work doesn't mean you have to be an astrologer, and finding the way to really utilize who you are and bring that out into your work.
That's so cool that you're a herbalist. So that's a lot of your Virgo magic there.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I guess I want to go back in your story a little bit because it does sound like there was a very distinct line in the sand in your life where you made a big transition and shifted your lifestyle and your career and all the things. And so I'm curious when you knew when it was time to make that shift in your life.
Yeah, whenever I tell this story, and this is a story that I tell more in depth in my book, but I always wish I was able to say, you know, I was just so courageous and I just took the leap. I honestly felt like my back was against the wall and I didn't have a choice. Like it was in my Saturn return. I was finishing my master's in film studies and I was studying in Montreal. And then I would fly out during the summers to Vancouver and I would work on film shoots, which was like really long days, like 12 to 15, 18 hour days plus sometimes. And my body just really shut down. It also lined up with when I met my now husband. And I think it was a combination of feeling really safe and held in my relationship. And it was my Saturn return. It was just time to clear out what was not where I wanted to be going. And I really, in doing my master's, that was the first time I really felt total freedom to do what I wanted with my day. Obviously within film, they were like, you can study whatever you want. You can write about whatever you want. And I started to ask myself the question like, well, what do I want? What am I interested in? What do I care about? And I started to just really have freedom to play and to be creative. I had access to, I was like editing. I made a found footage film. I had access to camera equipment. I started learning photography. And just that's when I discovered the artist way. And I really started to listen to myself and to just see my own ideas and my desires on the page objectively come up again and again and again and again. And I realized that because when I was working in film, I was behind the camera and it was, you know, it was fun. It was adventurous. I got to like run up and down mountains and explore and be outside and meet tons of people. But I wasn't creatively expressing my voice. And I think as someone who's historically always been creative, I was really missing that. And I realized that that was just a need for me. I'm a Leo sun. And when I started to create again more from myself, from my own voice during my master's, I think it just made me realize I wanted to be doing more of that in my career. And I felt like I was kind of wasting my life on film sets where it was like hours and hours and hours. Just like I worked on some interesting projects, but the best paid gigs were like car commercials and stuff like that. So I ended up taking them and I was like, this is not what I want my legacy to be. And I didn't have time to have habits to really take care of my health or to get into projects because it was such an all-consuming career. So I knew that I had to change. I wanted to have an online business because I'd started to discover that world. But I thought, oh, I'm going to have to go back to business school. I'm going to have to start from scratch again. Like I had no idea how long it would take or how I would do it or what skills that I needed. And then my friend invited me out to come and help her with her social media on her online business out in Bali in Indonesia. And I was like, oh, this is a sign from the universe. It's a step in the right direction. So I put all of my stuff in storage. I did my last season in film and I got a one-way ticket out to Bali. And that job just kind of fell apart a few months after I got there. But during that time, we realized that I was pretty good at writing and I was just chipping in on meetings and helping out with her website copy. And she was like, you're really good at this. You should speak to some of the other writers. There were some other freelance writers living out there in Ubud. And so I took one of them out for lunch and I was picking their brain and I was like, do you think I could do this? And she grilled me and asked me all these questions to see if I was a real writer. And I never considered that as an identity. But when we looked at my history, we were like, oh no, I used to write for theatre. I've been writing 50-page papers on philosophy and film for the last 3 years. And she kind of gave me the steps to get started as a freelancer on Fiverr.com, which was like a freelance website like Upwork. And I just started putting up gigs. I started as an editor. Then I noticed a lot of people were asking for support with sales copy. And so I took a course in copywriting and things just kind of took off for me. And I started getting a lot of clients, started just building up all my reviews and building up my portfolio. And every time someone would hire me, they'd be like, can you do, website copy, sales page copy, social media copy, brochure copy, whatever. I would just Google how to do it and I would just do it. And I guess that foundation of storytelling combined with some pretty simple copywriting, like strategic ways of writing, really set me up. And I just started increasing my prices. And then I started my own copywriting agency and I attracted a lot of coaches as clients. And that's what introduced me to the coaching world. So I ended up in a coaching program. I discovered mindset, started working on my money mindset, and I replaced my freelance film income within 1 year. Then I started my copy agency and I doubled my income again. So that went from like 25 to 50K. And then I started my coaching business and really started launching scalable group programs and high ticket offers. And I doubled my income again from 50 to 100K within 13 months of launching my coaching business. It was really a one breadcrumb at a time thing of just being clear on what I knew I wanted. That was different. Recognizing when an opportunity presented itself, taking it, and just day by day trying out different things and putting myself out there. Really, the skill sets that I realized I had already was pretty much being able to write well. I had to retrain myself to write in a completely different way because I just was coming from academia, which is a very specific way of writing, to copywriting, which is very different. But there are some key foundational principles that once you have them, if you can write, it's really not that difficult. But the difficult stuff was the mindset stuff, like becoming more visible, overcoming my anxiety around money and like asking people for money and choosing my prices. That was the hardest part of it for me. So it was really being able to tell my story and copywriting and then money mindset. Those were the key skills that I really had to work on to grow my businesses. And yeah, it's pretty much the same thing that I've continued to work on to this day, and really trusting myself and following my intuition. And I think that gave me so much faith that if something feels exciting to me, if it comes across my path and it seems aligned, like I might as well give it a go because it's probably going to lead me somewhere good. That's my business strategy 101.
I couldn't agree more. And I really feel like there's a through line connecting creativity and intuition and how they build off of each other, and both of them need space to come through. And when you start to tune into your creativity, you start to build up your intuition and vice versa. So I love that that came through in your story, and also this connection to trust. Like, we can't be intuitive and creative beings in this world if we're not going to trust ourselves, because otherwise we will just fall back into what everyone else is telling us to do. But I really want to touch deeply on the money mindset piece, because this is a conversation that has come up actually in a lot of podcast episodes in the past and in a lot of conversations that I have with others around money, and why it's something that people want to talk about more, but it's so taboo. And I want to know First of all, why you think it's so hard for us, especially as women, to talk about money?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have so much to say. I mean, first of all, I think there's a reason why we don't talk about money, right? Because the more we become empowered in a topic, the more power we have. So it's a historical system of oppression to help the people who have power maintain power by making sure that other people don't have access to that power. Like that's, I'm sure, very specifically designed and in place. You know, like religion, obviously another very prevalent system of thought and system of power, has a lot of language in it that has been interpreted as it's not being right to talk about money, it not being sacred, like the money is the root of all evil, which is taken out of context, that quote, a lot of the time. But so anyway, I'm from England. Obviously, that is the culture, that is the foundation of American culture and predominant Western culture. And so I'm sure we've all felt it, right? Your parents have probably said things to you like, oh, don't ask how much they earn, or, you know, we don't talk about that. Or if we're struggling with money, we don't talk about it. Like we sweep it under the carpet. People are extremely uncomfortable talking about money. So how can we possibly expect to be skilled at something that we don't talk about, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. So that's barrier number one. It's just uncomfortable. It's not socially encouraged. And we are going to experience discomfort and pushback when we raise questions and we try to talk about money. So that's one way that we do not have access to education and skill building. The other aspect, which I think is really important, that makes it so emotionally challenging to enter into these conversations is because money is so intrinsically connected to our survival, to our basic survival needs, right? If we don't have money, we can't eat, we can't pay rent, we have nowhere to live. We're literally unsafe. We're not protected when we don't have access to money. And especially for women and for minority communities who have probably had a lot of experiences where we feel unsafe in the world. Right? Speak to any woman, they're going to tell you stories of how they felt threatened, they didn't feel safe, whether they were out late at night or they were confronted or they've actually experienced emotional or physical or sexual abuse or trauma. These are extremely prevalent experiences for minority populations who aren't the predominant white male superpower. So we have these inbuilt protection systems that tell us don't be unsafe. We must protect ourselves. So naturally, our deep survival mechanisms tell us to not confront, to not trigger, to not provoke, to not attract attention to ourselves. And so much of this is happening unconsciously. And so I realized when I started having to learn money and look up my money when I became an entrepreneur, when I had to decide what my price tag was, how I was going to receive money, I had to ask for money every day, had to put myself out there, had to communicate my value and market my services. When I would sit down to start to do work on money related things, I would have very physical, emotional, visceral reactions. I would feel really overwhelmed. I would feel super anxious. I would have so much resistance. And as I started to work on my money and have conversations and get support with my mindset around money and with sales and raising my prices and these types of things, I really was in that process of asking, like, where does this crazy behavior come from? Why are my hands shaking when I'm trying to raise my rates or I'm trying to put myself out there online? And I started to ask a lot of those questions, like what's going on in my relationship with money? What is my belief system? What am I telling myself? What are my unconscious beliefs around why it doesn't feel safe to be more seen, to be more visible, to receive more money and ask for more money? When I went back to my past and the misogynistic, emotional, physical, and sexual trauma that I had actually experienced in my past, which I had not had any memory of until I started doing this work and really doing that emotional processing, learning the tools to be able to take care of myself and tell my system, like, yeah, obviously when you were younger, you had experiences where you weren't able to protect yourself, when you literally weren't physically safe and you did not have power. to protect yourself, but like you're an adult now and you are safe, and it is safe to ask for and receive money. And so these protective patterns were showing up in my relationship with money that were causing me to be really avoidant. So that was holding me back from building skill. And I just had to really support myself to slowly put myself in conversation with money regularly, build habits, look at my mindset, build new belief systems, new pathways, so that I could actually build some skills like accounting and sales and communicating my worth and my value and asking for money and marketing myself and paying down my debts, financial planning, keeping and growing and organizing my money and creating systems to be able to do that, which obviously you have to have if you're an entrepreneur, if you are in any kind of business and you want to be making money doing whatever it is that, your work is that you're passionate about. So I think this is just a really important to acknowledge that there's a reason why we don't have these skills, is because of that emotional resistance. And so we need emotional care, we need emotional support and tools to be able to make it feel safer and to just move through that huge amount of resistance that we have. And so it's so important to find people and places that feel safe and nurturing to start having these conversations. I remember when I did a women's circle, it was actually when I was living in upstate New York, and I spoke my desires to make a lot of money for the first time. And I was sitting with this circle of women who were a lot older than me, and they're like 60s and 70s. And I was like, I want to be really creative and I want to make lots of money and I want to be really successful. And I could just feel this shame like bubbling up from inside of me. And it was so uncomfortable. And I was like, wow, none of these women were judging me. None of these women were like, who is she? I mean, maybe they were, but they didn't say, it was a completely safe space. And it just made me realize, oh, I've somewhere along the line been made to feel shame for having big dreams, for wanting money, and that wanting money is a shameful thing. And so I had to just practice that over and over and over again, because our internal system will create resistance to things that don't feel safe internally. So that's where the power of money mindset comes in, is just making these conversations safe internally within ourselves first and foremost. Like, it's safe to have big goals. It's safe to want lots of money. It's safe, good and right to ask for the money that you desire and to do the work that you love and to be valued and to be creative and to live in alignment with our values and not have to sacrifice our health or our family or our well-being or any of the things that we value in order to create wealth and to grow wealth and to do our work in the world. And so, yeah, it was a process. I think the most important message is the only thing between where you are now and where you want to be is a skill and an action gap. We can do anything. And if we have the desire to do something, that means we're meant for it. And that means we're capable. So if something feels hard, then step number one is to get more support, because things only feel hard when we don't have enough support. And step two is to just build skills. And obviously getting support to figure out what skills are appropriate for us to build to get to where we want to go faster, because there's a million paths to a net worth of $1 million or however much it is you want to create. So you get to define based on where you are, based on your skill set, based on your phase of life, based on your abilities, based on what you currently have accessible to you. There is a path to create change, to get to that next level of income and freedom and satisfaction. So identify what those skills are that are going to get you there the fastest and in the way that you are excited about getting there, and really focus on building them and nurturing them. And it really starts with just investing time. I always like to think it's really helpful to compare money to dental hygiene. We're taught to clean our teeth when we're little kids, so our teeth don't drop out, so we don't have bad breath. We don't brush our teeth at like the beginning of the month and then expect to have nice breath at the end of the month if we don't keep brushing our teeth. Same thing with money. Just pay attention to it, nurture it, check your bank accounts, take actions that lead to sales, be in the numbers and just figure it out. Build your own systems in whatever way works for you right now, and just keep at it, keep building those habits, and you'll come across the things that you need to get you where you want to go.
Absolutely. And something that you highlighted is the fact that we just need to normalize it. Like talking about money, dealing with money, it's a normal everyday thing that we all have to do. And just like with any topic, if we're not talking about it, if we're resisting it, it's going to take power over us, and it's going to be so hard for us to handle it in a really healthy way, because otherwise we're staying disconnected from it and we're letting the shame take over, and we're also not just allowing it to be something that can be supportive in our life. So I think a lot of the time the first step is, like you were saying, finding supportive, safe people to start to talk about money with and to work through what comes up for you around that. And I found that the more I've been able to talk about money and any topic in my life, it removes the shame and it removes the power it has over me. And I think it's no wonder why it's so much harder for women to talk about money, for women to ask about money, because there is a direct connection to money and power and money and freedom and independence. And what, even if that's not something that you consciously think people are taking away from you, it's very ingrained in our society that women stay at a certain level of power and freedom and independence. And so us as women especially need to be talking about money more and normalizing it and asking for the amount that we need and that our work is worth.
100%. And that conversation start with yourself in the mirror. You've probably heard people suggest this mirror work, and deciding also from a logical place what you want your price to be, instead of being like, oh, like if I charge low, I just feel like people will can afford that more. This is just a random thought in your head based on what? But working backwards, what is your vision for your life? What is the dollar amount on that? How do you want to get there? How many clients or numbers do you need? And what does the price point need to be in order for you to reach that without working 100 hours a week, without burning out, while being able to prioritize your health and your family, and knowing what that number is for you? And then if it feels really outrageous to your nervous system, to just normalize it, speak it in the mirror, write it down. Like I talk about the post-it note strategy in my book, where I would just write my next income goal on a post-it note and put it on my laptop. And I started at like $20 an hour. And then I went up to 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, 300. And then I just departed from the time for money paradigm altogether, just going through that process one step at a time and just normalizing it, getting excited about it, and asking, well, what do I need to do to sell more at this price? Who do I need to be? What are the skills? What are the actions? And the more exposure we have to ideas, the less triggering and reactive they will be for our nervous system. So play with big numbers, expose yourself to these conversations, even if that's just starting with yourself.
And I think that this is one way that you can weave the practical and the magic together, is by doing certain strategies, starting to look at your bank account more, putting these things into your schedule, and then also making it a ritual, like sitting down with your tea while you do it, stepping outside, or finding a way to regulate your nervous system before and after with deep breaths. It's important to remind ourselves that this can be fun, and also it is challenging. So supporting ourselves with the tools we have while we're navigating our shifting relationship with money.
I love that. And the thing I think that helped me the most in the beginning, when I was really resistant and really avoidant and really triggered and like overwhelmed by being in my money, is it's called body doubling. So I would invite friends over and be like, what hard thing do you have to work on? Let's just work on it together. I went 3 years without filing my taxes twice. That happened to me. And I was like, oh, I just have to put my big girl pants on and I have to get this done. And I would invite my friends over, we would put on music, make a cup of tea, and be like, okay, what are you working on? What hard thing are you going to get done right now? We would hype each other up. And that really, really helped me, to the point that now, and I still have resistance in getting into the numbers, but like not as much. I enjoy it when I get in there, and like I have the capacity to sit and do that myself now, but it took me a really long time to build those habits. And so knowing that it's not always going to be hard, and if something feels hard in the beginning, the more exposure you can give yourself to it, the faster it's going to start to feel easier.
Oh, I really love that ritual. I'm going to do that. What is one hard thing you feel like you're working through right now that you're trying to shift?
Okay, I'm like, which one do I pick?
Yeah.
I think probably letting myself play more in long form video,
Mm.
because I have a background in film. I've only ever made a couple of short films, but I know how much work editing takes. And I think since getting into entrepreneurship and social media marketing, I kind of built my systems where I create content, I attract clients, I serve clients, and things have changed a lot since I first was marketing myself on Instagram back in like 2015. It's a whole different world and it's always evolving. And that's kind of the nature of social media platforms, right? Is they're always going to change because they're always trying to keep our attention and keep our engagement going. And so it took me a couple years to get on board with Reels. I was like, oh, video editing takes so much time. I'm sure a lot of people feel that frustration. And there's one side of me that wants to keep things super simple because the purpose of my business was to give me creative freedom. But the other purpose of my business was to share my story and to impact people through what I create. So I've been in this push-pull conversation between these two things, and I'm feeling really intuitively drawn to get back into longer form video editing and storytelling. But there's a big part of me that really resists editing. And I have my own podcast, and my podcast editor, who's been working with me since the beginning in 2020, recently got hired for a really great full-time job. So she left me, and I was like, okay, this is just signs from the universe that's pushing me off the ledge to get back in to the editing process. So now I'm doing my own podcast editing, and I'm like, yeah, it does take more time. Also, I really enjoy it. I do really enjoy editing. So I'm kind of running in circles because obviously I'm trying to get pregnant, and I'm like, taking on things that take more time just doesn't feel like a good logical thing to be doing in my business right now. So yeah, trying to give myself more time to play and create. And I have experimented a little bit with just doing some longer form editing, and it takes more time. It does take more time, but it doesn't take that much time, you know, and it feeds me and I love it and I express myself, and people are able to get a lot from these types of content. So yeah, that's probably my hard at the moment, is really giving myself the time, but mainly getting over the mental resistance to allowing myself to be in a little bit more of an undefined creative process in my content. I think I'll probably want to make, and like I have some screenplay ideas that I want to write that came through for me after I finished my book. So I'm in that very uncomfortable zone of having loads of ideas and loads of projects that I really want to work on. And the long-term planning of it all, wanting to do it all now, being realistic with my priorities, and trusting that the things that want to be made will get made in the perfect timing.
Absolutely. And I think it's so easy for us to want the process to be quicker. Just like online, people are more geared towards short form content because we're just used to scrolling through Reels and TikToks. But I am such a fan of long form content because it takes longer, both in taking it and creating it. We're invested in it more. So I'm celebrating you and your future creative endeavors. And that sounds
Thank
really exciting.
you.
Yeah. Okay, living intuitively wild means connecting to your true self and living dedicated to who you are at your core, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
I feel like I do that. I feel like it's not really an option or a choice for me. I think that's how I got into the work that I do now, is by really following my intuition. And so I've learned the lesson so many times that it's not going to work if you ignore your intuition, you know? It's just not. Like, it might work up to an extent, but the more you surrender and the more you pay attention, the better it's going to work out for you and for everyone. So that's just the truth that I know to my core. Obviously, I still resist, but I think I'm pretty proud of the way that I continue to follow my intuition. And I honestly believe that I prioritize that more than anything else. I've taken so many leaps and evolved a lot in my business by doing that, in since the beginning, and then bringing in more astrology, and then starting my podcast, writing my book. And I think I'm pretty good. I just turned 40, and I heard from other women friends that this like gene flips inside of you when you turn 40, where you just don't care about what anyone has to say anymore. You're just this new level of freedom, of authenticity. I definitely feel like I did a lot of work around that in my 30s and really going through it in a lot of relationships. And I definitely feel like I'm in a place now where I'm like, oh, I am in charge of how amazing my day is. And it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. I have the power to choose my mood, what I take on, what I don't take on, what I prioritize, what I ask for, what I receive, what I say no to. So I'm sure by the time I turn 50, I'll be even better at this. But yeah, I definitely feel like I'm at a good place with that, with protecting my inner peace and prioritizing the things that I'm intuitively drawn to and that make me feel really just in love with my life.
I love that so much. And I relate in the sense that when I'm connected to my intuition, something's not aligned with that. I like physically can't do it. And I see that as a blessing. I think it's such a gift to have that strong resistance and to allow yourself to lean into that. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being here.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.